So when we talk about translations, what we already learned is about how we try to find the equal meanings of or forms of sentences into another language. So the translations of scientific discourse. What do we mean by scientific discourse in the first place? Um, what we think in common, or generally speaking, scientific discourse will be things that are related to scientific works, probably articles, some journals, some experiments and such. And these are the things that also seen in line to the meaning of scientific discourse that are presented by Ruth. She said it as scientific discourse has been used to refer special purpose language employed by scientists, normally in their laboratory or perhaps more accurately in formal papers. In formal papers, for examples like journals, articles, and textbook. And this is something that we often found when we talk about scientific discourse. And generally speaking, scientific discourse or textual scientific texts, they are totally different to the text of literature and other humanity studies. What is seen in scientific discourse are the specific part of text that they try to avoid some of these terms. For example, values that are here related to how the writer see or perceive things in his own manner, but in scientific discourse is all about they try to avoid bringing values that are not relevant to the subjects of experiments or research that are being conducted. And also emotions, scientific texts need to avoid by the writer into giving his or her emotions into interpretations of the studies, and this is meant for bringing the objectivity of related subjects. And the other things that simply being avoided by these course, scientific texts are aesthetics in terms of how the sentences should be combined or the rhymes, for examples. So they are not really like poems or poems or any forms of literature works that usually we see to present the language with its own aesthetics. The other things that scientific texts try to avoid is the use of figuratives. They need to be very specific and straightforward to the issues or the notions that are being discussed in order to bring clarity for the subject or the research that they are trying to present it. Also, when we try to see the scientific text, there are some requirements that need to have by scientific translators, because scientific texts are really specifics, and therefore requirements for these translators are also needed. For example, a broad knowledge of subject matter of the text that been translated. Oftentimes we found a specific topic about the text. For example, we have text about fisheries. We have text about mathematics. We have text or journals that are related about subject in physics, for example. This specific translator need to have broad knowledge, not only about the subject matter, but also in general, what are the terms that usually used, what are the specific means of uh, uh, requirements of journals that are need to be meet in order for articles to be published. And also, we seen about the well-developed imaginations that enable translator to visualize the equipment or process being described. Scientific translator need to have clear understandings and clarity upon the subject or the text that are going to translate it. He need to be able to use not only his language repertoire, but also his knowledge of for using other equipment to help his to help him or her for doing translations, and the intelligence to fill the missing links in the original text. Oftentimes, we found that texts are written in source language that are seem to be very easy to understand because of the writer himself is writing in his own first language or mother tongues. However, when we try to translate the language into target language, we often find that the norms of writing in target language are different in the original text. Therefore, we need to be able to understand what types of writing habits or norms that usually related, especially when we try to make publications on journals or articles. Um, the fourth is discrimination. Discrimination, what we mean here, to choose most suitable equivalent from the term in the literature, because different terms require different use in different subjects. For example, when we try to use the word nano, for example, the word nano, which means small or very little, can have different interpretation when it comes to the other subjects. For example, like nanoscience, nanotechnology, nanophysics, nanoeconomics, and so on. And the last is the ability to use one own language with clarity, consciousness, and precision. This is important because scientific texts understand need to be understood in a way the target reader should expect it to be understood. And therefore, the clarity and consciousness and precision of each translations requires a good skill from this translation. Oh, and the last is practical. Need to The translator must be at least scientist, engineer, linguist, and so on. So, and this is what major translation services usually do. They have specific translator with specific backgrounds. When they have clients that, for example, are engineer, they want to publish articles that are related to the topics of engineering. They will contact a specific translator who has the background or who has the knowledge of engineering, because it will be very easy for that kind of translator. For translator who don't have the experience of translating engineering, it will be difficult to understand and choosing the correct form of translation, because what we try to provide is the equal meanings in the target language. And scientific text, according to Baker and Sykes, they are logical order of utterances, meaning those structures of sentences and paragraphs are created in the logical order to present ideas that should have the clarity. And the use of specific terms. Use of specific terms will required on the topics or the topics of translations. So translations that are related to theology might have different terms. For example, like uh, hermeneutics, and other specific terms. And the engineering, different kind of bolts have different terms that are general people might consider to be the same. And another thing is impersonality using passive voice. It's often we found when we try to write, for example, our thesis in undergraduate thesis, we try to use the researcher instead of using I. We try to make distance between the readers and the text that we wrote that they are writing. And the use of quotation, references, and footnotes as a means of addressing ideas and notions that are taken from other researchers or other sources. And last, and is that it has its own terminology, and terminology will be related to the specific genre of text or notions that are going to be translated. Um, what I presented here is the difference between scientific and literature text. For example, scientific text will measure or try to present logicality, or while the literature will probably lack of argumentative progressions because they try to not to provide something to the reader. Precisions from scientific means it has to be precise on the notions or subjects that are going to be presented or trying to export it to the target language. And vagueness, oftentimes the literature presented words that have different interpretations have vagueness. You look at one sentence and it has different meaning, but it, on the contrary, it has to be precise on the scientifics and other things. For example, like um, idiomatic expressions that are extremely rare in the case of scientific texts because they try to uh, not making the reader to guess what is the meanings or what are the meanings of the sentences, while in the literature it is often we found the use of idiomatic expressions, and it's either in poem or in novel or in short stories. And probably the next one is the use of scientific terminology, specialized item and formula. It is most often when we try to translate texts that are related to researchers. They have their own formula, they have their own charts, they have their own terms that are specific to the topics. Um, The other things is the challenges that for translating scientific text. The first is that scientific language is very technical and can be difficult to convey across languages. As I previously explained before, that it is the case of large translation services needs to have different translator who has different backgrounds because they will because those specific texts, scientific texts require its technical terms that are only understand by those people who have that experience. And the certain concept may not exist in your target audience culture, so ideas need to be adapted carefully. In the case of translating, it is often we need to rearrange the sentences to meet the norms of understandings of the target readers, because it is oftentimes writer, when they write, they have their own specific norms or ideas or values that undermines their writings, and therefore it needs to be addressed carefully. And also the information need to be concise as possible, with few repetition ambiguities to mitigate confusions. As I mentioned before, that scientific text needs to be precise, and therefore repetitions are very rare to find. Repetitions of idea, repetitions of pronouns, for example, they try to mitigate the ambiguities that might happen. And also images, including graphs, charts, and diagram, must be localized and formatted in intended audience. It is the case that every translator try to do is to translate all um, the the graphs that have its own that are written in source language. They need to translate that into the localized or target language to be understood. And what I'm going to present here is the translation samples. These are the samples of translations that are taken from my private archive from the uh, articles that have been submitted to be translated. So the translations for these articles are this is and this is a research that are good that's supposed to be published. It is written by one of the students in faculties of fisheries and marine science. The researchers was writing about one of gastropods or shells as one of the shells that um, has its own economic values and such. So these are the texts that are being presented in source language in Bahasa Indonesia. And as we can see in here, that this translations or this text is a scientific text, and there are several things that need to be addressed by translators carefully in order to make the translations to be uh, better in target language. So, for example, when we try to look at this sentence, the first sentence, and you found the phrase bahan baku. For common people, when we see bahan baku, the first word that we might come in mind is the ingredients, but however, it has different meanings that is not suited to the text. When we choose to use ingredients, it is more likely to be something that's related to foods, for example. However, the equal form in English should be on the other sentence, should be on other words, for example, like raw materials. And also when we look at here, there are specific terms that related to coral reefs. So there are specific types of reefs, not only just coral reefs, but there are also um, barrier reef and fringing reefs. These are the types of reefs that most likely to be understood by the students of fisheries and fisheries department. And there are some examples in here. For example, like Keong Batulaga with its Latin name, Keong Matalambu. What the translator need to do is to find the generalized or common names in English, because these names are not cannot be translated literally. Keong Batulaga cannot be translated to English because it will be different, and it doesn't make sense for people who are studying uh, fisheries, and therefore generalized or common generalized or common scientific names in English will be required. And also in here, you can eliminate and eliminate some of the sentences or words and restructure to improve fluency. So it is basically okay for translator to put his own interpretations toward the text, as long as it doesn't change the overall meanings, but it's try to improve the fluency of the translations in target language. And therefore, the results of translations could be like this. So when we look at the sent at the translations, will be a lot shorter. So for example, bahan baku will be like raw materials for several industries like jewelry, souvenirs, and painting industries. And also like in this part, it says selanjutnya dikatakan bahwa gastropods, it can just simplify by saying these organisms will refer to the gastropods, are found in coral reef ecosystems such as fringing reef and barrier reefs. And also some of the names, for example, like Keong Batulaga, the common names that are used in English will be green turban snails, while the Keong Matambu is commonly known as silvermouth turban snails. And the notice that the translator basically put the brackets in here to match to fit with the norms of writing Latin names. Usually foreign terms need to be put in the brackets if they have to, especially in that Latin names of plants or animal that are being specifically translated from in the Bahasa Indonesia to English. And also like abalone, this is Indonesian writing, this is the English, and this is the last is so the translation samples might seem to be a little bit shorter, but it's okay as long as the ideas or the meaning that try to be converted is still there, is to show that these gastropods and then how it where it lives, what are their useful and so on. So think that is the so these are the reference that we use for making these presentations. And I think thank you very much for listening to these short presentations. And probably we will have question and answering sessions. So if
Okay,
there
thank you
are
very much.
questions
Thank
by
you very
Ibu
much,
Eti,
and okay,
yeah, ma'am.
clap hand. Thank you. Question and answer session, please. How about your friend? Tidak datang kah? And any message about?
I haven't got message from Stephanie, ma'am.
Stephanie? Oh, okay, that's
Yeah,
all right.
because
Okay,
she's in Siram,
di
so
gunung ya. Okay,
di Gunung,
okay.
ma'am. Yeah.
Laura and Maria, question please. Henry, thank you very much for the
Thank you,
presentation.
ma'am.
Yes. Okay, Laura and Maria, time's yours. Questions.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Laura.
I'm sorry, I'm using laptop while I'm using my handphone. My question is, in your requirement of scientific translation, you said that no, before no. Yeah. Yeah, no, the first one.
This one?
Requirement, yes.
Yes, that one. Yeah, I'm curious about number 2, a well-developed imagination that enables the translator to visualize the equipment or process being described. Can you make it more simple, or because in scientific translation there is no imagination, I think, because everything is fixed. Everything is fixed. It's not same with the literature translation. In literature translation, we do need a lot of imagination.
Okay.
Explain by that. It's number
Yeah.
1, and second, or you just explain number 1.
Start with the second one. That's all right.
Yes, ma'am.
You can continue with the second one. So Henry will think about it. Yeah, sekali jalan deh. Do you have any other questions? You mentioned that that's number 1. And number 2?
Yeah, number 2, yeah, ma'am.
Okay.
Can you mention the step for scientific translation? I mean, to how you eliminate the word does not have the relevance to another word, because every if you do that, it must be have ambigu for the target language. I mean, kalau dihilangkan membuat apa namanya translation ke another language-nya bisa ambigu atau malah tidak ada arti sama sekali. Ada step-nya atau tidak, atau langsung dihilangkan saja. Kalau tidak ketemu yang relevan, atau bagaimana?
Kalau yang tidak ketemu yang relevan langsung dihapus atau gimana pertanyaan?
Iya.
Oke.
Maksudnya gini, ada step tidak step untuk scientific translator ini dalam mentranslate scientific paper. Karena tadi langsung bilang kalau tidak ada relevan katanya langsung dihilangkan. Apa itu nanti tidak membuat target language-nya ambigu atau malah tidak ada arti? Ada tidak?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's all, ma'am.
Okay, yes, Henry, silakan.
So for the first questions and how we deal with the imaginations. So what, for example, in here, when we say about a well-developed imaginations to visualize equipment or process being described, for example, like this, I once had translations request from the from the Language Study Center in Unpati. So the text is about the use of honey immersion treatment to improve the survival rate of betta fish. So it's how we use honey as a media to improve the survival rate of ikan cupang or betta fish. And in here, what I mean by the imagination is that in the text it's only described that the use of it described how the use of honey with different concentrations, where how many liters of water. I need to be able to specifically imagine how this process happened, because in the text they have different terms that are used. For example, like in saat when it's still in the larvae or masih dalam bentuk larva, and then how it turned out to be how it from spooning from the eggs, and then how it turned into larvae, and how the fish has been developed into adult fish. So there are different stages of processes that described in the text. So the spooning will refers to the process of how the eggs are being still in the hatchling, and then how it turned out to be small larvae or baby fish, small fish, and then how from the rearing process or nurturing, the common word might we say nurturing, how the rearing process of raising the larvae into the adult fish. So in order to understand that which definitions or which term to be used, is it hatchling, is it spooning, is it rearing, or is it nurturing, will have different meanings. So therefore I need to know these stages, or I can just imagine. Another example that I can give from my experience is when I translated the text from theology faculty. Uh, there was the text that are about feminism, gender, women's role in protecting the community, view by ecofeminism and eco theology. So how they view women's role in protecting the environment that have been presented by our God. Um, in that text, there are different terms that can be used when we refers to the people who live in the place. In one community, we might use villagers, or we can say the community, for example. But when we specifically need to understand whether the writer refers to the congregations, or is it refers to the community, or is the terms that are being used is specifically addressed for women's, or is it for young adults? because this different interpretations of these terms will result into different meanings, and this is something that we try to avoid in translating scientific texts. And for the second questions, I think what Kakaola, what Kakaola tried to ask is about how we can be selective in removing or restructuring the sentence to meet the norms or styles of writings for specific scientific texts. If that's so, for example, when we look at this sentence, when it says that selanjutnya dikatakan bahwa, the literal translations will probably goes like this. Next, it is said that gastropod can be found in coral reef ecosystems, for example, or reef ecosystems. Instead of saying that sentences, next it is said that we can simply omit that phrase, this phrase, as what I do with here, and I don't use repetitions. Instead of referring gastropod, I simply refers them as organisms, because gastropods are already introduced. The terms has already been introduced here, and we can use different terms to refer to the same subject, which is gastropod. And therefore, we reduce the repetitions that might happen, because in scientific, it is often found that what we also learn from how we write our scriptsy is to not make repetitions on pronouns or subjects. So instead of using gastropods are found, I can just simply uh, substitute that with organism. What I do not want to do is to eliminate the important words or phrases in the sentence. For example, in here, the one thing that should important are the gastropods, coral reefs, and barrier reef and fringing reef. These terms need to be there for presenting its correct meaning, that these organisms are found in these such places, barrier reef and fringing reefs. However, by omitting this structure, selanjutnya dikatakan bahwa it simply means that we try to make the sentence to be more efficient in terms of in its target language. So we do not make repetitions in gastropods, but we also not avoiding the use of unnecessary words to make the translation to be more suitable for articles, because these are supposed to be published in one of scientific journals. So I think that's the answer for two of your questions.
So there is no step. You just eliminate that by your own heart, that you feel it's not doesn't fit, then you eliminate it. There's no step.
Yeah. For overall translations, we have different methods. What I used to, the methods of translating the whole text will be, for example, I will look for difficult words, and then I will try to find the meanings, and also I will first read and then make the translations, and then make sure that there are no repetitions and unnecessary words. However, for the specific parts that you are asking, for example, in this sentence, it's just come by experience and observing a lot of journals that have been published. Um, Sometimes when you're doing translations, you can really found, or you can really feel that there are sentences that can be restructured, that can be rewrite to make it into simple and efficient. Instead of making two long separated sentences, we can just contract those sentences into one efficient sentences. And I do say that it comes not only from experience, but also from observing and learning the norms of scientific writings that we often found in reading articles and journals.
Yeah, Laura, thank you.
Yeah, Laura.
Thank you, Henry.
Okay, Andy.
Satisfied?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Maria. Question, please.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your presentation. In here, I have one question for you. My question is about your presentation in slide. Sorry, can you open your slide? In challenges for the translation of scientific text. Can you give one example about that?
Yes. For example, in number one, technical, it can be very technical. I do feel that when I translated the documents from one of the NGO who's working with PLN, there was one translation project that I took earlier this year. I have to translate it, the report from observations and projects that they have conducted in two islands in central Maluku, because they are working in the energy conversions, and they try to put solar energy for people in remote areas. So there are villages who have no access to electricity from PLN. They go to that village and they make observations and do projects to install solar panels in those areas. So for that project, for example, there are several terms that I need to learn. For example, when we're talking about electricity, there's a difference between voltage and amps. And then, for example, when they are talking to specific process of installing roof panels, for example, like tilt and azimuth, tilt angle sudut kemiringan, or azimuth angle sudut putar untuk memutar panel surya. Or for example, when they talk about shading, or shading is a general terms in solar energy that refers to the problems of having objects blocking the sunlight to directly sunlighting the panels. And there are some specific terms that need to be addressed in order to understand, because electricity and solar, those are the new areas for me, because I do not studying physics or electricity or any other subjects that related to science. So it's quite a project for me personally, but there's one example from the challenges as translator in translating scientific texts.
Okay, thank you, Andrea.
Maria, any other question? Hello? No?
No, ma'am.
No question at all. Okay, thank you very much. Exactly 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. We're going to do some comments later. Thank you,
Yes,
Henry. Please
Thank you,
give big hand to Henry for the presentation. A great presentation and for answering all the questions. Okay, next, please welcome Laura and Maria. Laura and Maria,
Yes, ma'am.
time is yours. Thank you, Han.
Thank you, ma'am.
Who will present first, Laura or Maria? Maria?
Maria, ma'am.
Barang kenapa? Laura belum mandi.
Maria, ma'am.
Okay, Laura. Laura and Maria. Yes, Maria. Please share your slide with us. Okay, please welcome Maria and Laura. Yay.
Okay, good afternoon, ma'am, and Fry Henry, Kakaula.
Please share your slide, please. Share slides.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good morning from Surabaya. Good noon.
I just show in my laptop, ma'am.
Lihat di situ ada sharing. Ada situ ada tulisannya share screen. Hijau di tengah. Can you find it? In the middle, share screen. The green one. Okay. Just click that button. Ada tulisannya share screen yang hijau itu.
Share screen.
Ya, yang ada hijau itu ada share screen. Just click to that.
But the file I don't copy in my handphone.
Beta pukul sih.
Yes, ma'am.
Lalu gimana?
If you didn't mind, I just show in my handphone, in laptop.
Oh, okay. Please welcome Maria. Okay, great. We can see it. Yep.
You can see, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. In our group presentation today, the topic is a translation of text in the humanities, art, literature, and humor. Essentially, translation is an art because the translator is trying to figure out what is mean in one language, and then is basically painting and a picture of what is mean in other language. These are the basic elements that are used by artists in creating art. They are what you use to create an aesthetically pleasing work. When we make art, we need to understand and apply these 7 elements of art. The first one is a line. Line is a mark made by a pointed tools such as a brush, pen, or a stick. And the next element is a shape. Shape is a felt enclosed area that has 2 dimensions, length and the width. And the next element is a color. Color is one of the most dominant elements. It is created by the light. And the next element of art is a value. Value is a degrees of lightness of darkness. The difference between value is called a value construct. And the next element is a form. Form is object that are 3 dimensions, having a leg, a width, and the egg. They can be viewed from many sides, from take up a space and the volume. And the next element is a texture. Texture is describes the feels of on actual surface. The surface quality and object can be real or implied. And the last elements of art is space. Space, it means that used to create the illusion of deep. space can be two dimension, dimension positive and the negative. And we move to next slide. Translation of text in humanity. Humanities is a paper which, when compared with other ordinary writings, have a various characteristic of the superiority or authenticity of the beauty of the content and expression. In here, three types of a text in humanities. The first one is a drama, and the second one is a prose, and the last one is a poetry. Drama is a literary work in the form a story that is staged. And the prose is free work classified into a kind of literature. And the last one is a poetry. Poetry is more inclined short writing, but has a very deep meaning. Okay, next slide will be explained about with Kakaola. Kakaola, please.
Okay, Laura, we cannot hear you.
Wait, ma'am, I'll just share my where is the files? Hmm, where is it? Ma'am, I will continue.
Okay, yes, Laura.
Translation of text in the humanities, arts, literatures, and humor, which is first one about humanities and arts. That's been explained by Maria, and I will do the last, which are literature and humor. So this is the outline, and then I just briefly up to the C part, which is literature translation. The concept of literature, literature is consists of poetry, plays, literary books, literary text, as well as song, rhyme, literary articles, fiction novels, short story, poem. And then just abuse is different between scientific translation. The second one is the type of literary by the expert. So John Ryan, in his preface to a bit, says that literary is have a three basic, which is metaphrase, paraphrase, and imitation. So metaphrase is the turning an outer word by word or line into the first language. And then paraphrase is the translation with a sense of sense, not by word of word like in the scientific translation. And then imitation, uh, where the translation can abandon the text of the original of the sense why we see it so fit. And then uh, and then the next is part of the literature, which is first one is prose. The concept of prose is derived from the Latin words prosa, which literally means straightforward. Means that we have say something in forward. And then the typical language used in prose, which is more common, more easier to understand, has a natural pattern of speech and communication, has grammatical structure with sentence and paragraph, and use everyday language. So prose is, the conclusion is we can understand because it's used everyday language and easy to understand. And an example of prose in novel, I take from the Charles Dickens, which is A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best time, it was the worst of time, it was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. I think we can understand this because it's used everyday language and we can understand. And then example, prose in magazine, newspaper, or encyclopedia. Some of the export of Brazil are soybean, sugar, orange juice, and iron ore. But one, two, three example here, you can understand because it's typical language that used in prose. It's easy to understand. So next one is drama. The term of drama is a Greek word which means action. The older meaning, drama is refers to performance stage. Next one is the practical consideration of drama. When we translate the drama, it must have the characteristics of the speaker. It must have the characteristics of time, of place. It must not ambiguous. It should able to give the emphasis. A translation must be careful with entrance, line, and exits. A translator must know line sounds natural and still. The last one, if the translator doesn't know it, the actor will be stuck in the stage and doesn't know what to do. And then the last one, the next, according to Gravier, a direct statement followed by questions should be pronounced by intonation. We do know that if people place or perform the drama, they have the good intonation, they have the good pronunciation. And then each allusion must be transparent. Allusion here is mean the act that we do before. And then an archaic grammatical is not allowed. Archaic grammatical, it's like it comes from the older English that you may hear, or sometimes you may notice that like a die or dine or what else? They can change the verb into a plus th in the back of the word, like think, thinkest, or what else? Do as, like that. Word translation is not allowed because in the stage we have to consider about the tense. And then next, poetry. The concept is from Udaya Kumar. It's the Greek term poiesis, which means making or produce something which use the aesthetic and rhythmic qualities of language. And the next element of making poet, there is a two element here, which is poetic element and practical element. Poetic, we use meter, verse, prompt, form, rhyme, repetition of word. Maybe you know repetition of word is like the end of the sentence, maybe form like A, B, B, something like that. And then verse means two stanza or three stanza. And then the practical element, assonance, alliteration, onomatopoeia, it's type of poet. Next, step in poetry translation. Before because why have a step in here? Because as you know, poetry translation is not as simple as we do translate the drama or prose, because it's banyak hal dalam poetry yang seperti yang tadi, banyak hal ini yang kita harus pikirkan, yaitu first, form, rhyme, repetition of word, alteration, tidak mudah untuk mentranslate poetry. Ini ada stepnya. First one, decide on whom to be translated, including translator should use his translation activity as opportunity to talk to the society of the target language. Maksudnya adalah apakah hasil dari translate ini menyentuh target language. And then translation activity must create original work. It means that she has do this is by her own or his own, not to plagiate or something, because if she plagiate or do something not good, it will be making less of the meaning. And then the translator which should have a cultural impact on the target language society. The translator, through his translators, should reach the reader or the target language and the writer of the source language text. Continue. This is okay. Continue. Background of the poet can be choosing the poet, reading the poet, try to understand the contribution of the poet to his culture, and then analyze style, themes of the poet. The result is, after that, the translator may know what or she stands for, because if we want to translate the poem, we have to dig detail into the poem, which is reading the poem carefully, try to understand, put our mind into the poet, and then not our mind, try to dig deeper until we find what the poet stands for, what the poet is about. It's apakah itu tentang kritisisme atau feminisme atau sesuatu yang sarkasme. Jadi kita harus close reading of the poem. Jadi secara dekat membaca lagi, yaitu start reading of the text. Read the poem not with our tongue, but with the tongue of the poet. But this is the hard one. While read, we should concentrate on all aspects. With the view, with the mind of the poet, with the soul of the poet, not our soul. We just translate our head into the poet's head. Feel the rhythm of the poem, and the pace, the pause, the beats of the poem should also be recognized. That it's make simple. And then the result, the poem will become friendly to the translated, and it becomes easier for us to translate it. 4, find out parallel. As the translator catches the mind of the writer or poet and then present it, and then the translator needs to engage or not to engage to sense, but not word to word, because this is not the scientific translation. This is the sense that we feel beauty in it or rhyming in it. So the last is the translator should undergo such mental process or finding out parallel for the text it translates. Mental process in here means that when we do about the translator in poet, we just feel our heart into the we engage our heart, mind, and soul into the poet itself. So we can have the right meaning or the exact meaning of it. We cannot do imagination or sembarang saja, tapi no, we do have a step. 5, making use of technology. We use the translation tool device. Result, saving more time. This translator may engage her mind to enrich sense of the translation. Next, example of the poem, which is I took from the Shakespeare's name. This is the sonnet. If you had a time, maybe you can translate what does it mean by the step that I was just give to you. If you had a time, because it's not easy for us to translate this type of poem. Like my mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun.
Could you share the screen, Maria?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you share the screen with us? We cannot see your screen. Have you shared the screen with us? Screen-nya mana?
Punya saya, Mem?
Yuk, saya dapat lihat. Screen-nya mana?
Okay, like this. Can you see, ma'am? Ma'am,
Okay. Mhm.
can you see it? Ma'am?
Okay, okay.
Okay, so it's the example of the poem from the most famous one, Shakespeare. This is the sonnet. I think it's hard for me to understand because it needs a lot of thinking, a lot of work. It's not simple as we translate the prose or a scientific translation, ma'am. Like I have seen rose damask, red and white. What does it mean? But no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfume is there more delight, which is more delight ini perfume atau the mistressnya? Doesn't know. Then in the breath that front my mistress reads. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know. So I think this is the hard one when to translate the poem because we have to deal with the step that I just explained before. So the next, the difference between the poem and the prose. The poem has rhythm or rhyme. Rhyme itu yang kita lihat di belakangnya sama-sama kata, A, repeating pattern beats juga, and then use figurative language seperti simil, sarkasme, atau hiperbola. And then the prose has another pattern of speech, of communication, itu jelas, mempunyai pattern ya. Has grammatical structure of sentence, itu jelas, and use everyday language, which is easy to understand and easy to translate. And then the next one is humor translation. Concept of humor is explained by Spanakaki. Humor is what causes amuse, spontaneous smile, and laughter, while humor translation refers to the way of achieving this effect in the target language recipient. Kita yang terima ininya. And then humor in translation. Aspect to be concerned before we do translate the humor is, there is a several steps. First one is cultural and social reference. Why we say why is it say the cultural and social reference? Because every country has the different culture or social. Because if we do translate something that touch a culture of target language, he doesn't know that if the target language is okay or not. He doesn't know. Just like the example here, the cultural root elements, like what the on this is the conversation between two person, and then what is the only thing that grows in Auckland? Auckland is a place, yeah, ma'am, in state, ma'am.
Yep. Yeah.
Auckland is the place in state.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, betul.
Okay. I just make sure because the answer is the crime rate. Obviously, if somebody say that what's only thing that grows maksudnya tumbuh, apa sih yang tumbuh di Auckland? Bisa saja orang bilang banana or cherry or apple. But the answer is the crime rate. It means that in Auckland kejahatannya semakin tinggi. Jadi kalau ditanya ini humor, kalau humor yang bersinggungan dengan kultur. Jadi kalau ditanya what's the only thing that grows in Auckland? The crime rate. It's not banana or cherry. And then stereotype. So every culture has its own stereotypes about foreign. Kita cenderung, we do tend to stereotype people. Like maybe in Indonesia, well, I just give the example of America. Maybe in Indonesia, like orang Padang is stingy, but not most of the Padang is stingy, but just general one. We just cover one, and then we generalize every Padang is stingy. It's not like it is not. Maksudnya tidak diperbolehkan untuk stereotype dalam mentranslate humor. And then language. Kenapa harus aspek harus kenapa harus concern about language? Pertama karena because of all language share the same word, not all yang bahasanya sama. Terus we trying to find equivalent, it's hard because not like what Henry said before, because every country doesn't have the same meaning for one word. And the second, because of all language differ in linguistic aspect, which is words, writing, or structure. And then continue. The example of from language which can find equivalent from English to Spain. This is the translation. I'm the cool dad, that's my thing. I'm hip, I'm surf the web. I text LOL, OMG, and WTF.
Yes, Laura? Hello? Hello, I cannot hear you. Hello? Laura? Hello, can you hear her? Laura, I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me, ma'am?
Okay, yes. Just now.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is the example of humor text. Maybe if you can understand it, maybe you can translate it. Please, Henry or Maria.
I have problem seeing your screen. I don't know why.
You
I can only see this,
Yeah,
Laura.
the same.
Right? Yeah, I cannot see your screen, so we cannot read. We cannot read your text.
Ah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, ma'am.
come?
This is like not my laptop, and then I just. Okay.
Yeah, you can
Okay.
see. No, no. Anybody can see the screen? I only can see this.
Now you can see or
No,
not,
ma'am.
ma'am?
No,
Ma'am.
no.
No,
Henry, can you
Cola.
see it? No, no, Laura.
No, how to
How come?
how
Ada di
to
tengah
make
itu
it?
loh.
I don't know. Oh my
Share
god.
screen di tengah yang hijau.
I know, ma'am, but this is not my laptop, so I just.
No, itu ada di bawah tuh PPT translation di bawah.
Oh, di atas, di atas. Now share.
Buka dulu. Open your PPT and then share.
Resume or new, ma'am? Edik,
Coba
resume or
resume.
new?
Resume
Resume,
ya.
okay, resume. And then?
Oke, coba ya.
Okay. Like this? Can you see?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Can you see it?
Ada hijau itu, share screen itu, udah.
Yeah.
Kakak Ola buka?
Buka dulu, kelihatannya tidak buka. Loh, kita kelihatannya belum
Coba
buka.
Kakak Ola, can you just end
Ya, keluar dulu.
end your sharing?
Okay. Stop sharing.
Okay,
So,
stop sharing. Okay, now
and then
share
Nah,
screen.
share screen. Okay.
ya,
Share
green
screens
one.
and then look for the one. Have you opened the presentation window?
Yes.
Have you opened it? Have you?
I tried to. Now. Can you see
Yes.
it?
Get it!
Yeah.
Finally!
Yeah.
Thank you, Han, for your guiding. Yes. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, this is the example of humor text, ma'am.
Open.
If
Besar.
you understand, you can translate it. I just take to text.
Presentation, please. Screenshot supaya besar. Share screen. Nah, ya udah nggak apa-apa lah. Whatever. Okay. Okay, continue, Laura, please.
Yes, ma'am. You can see my text?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I just take two texts here, example of humor text. Maybe you can try to translate it. Maria, Henry?
Where's your text?
Okay, you can write in the text box, chat box.
Ma'am?
Okay. Maria and Henry write the translation version in the text chat box. Could you? Translate into Bahasa Indonesia, right?
Why you laugh? Maria, would you give it a shot for Hendrik?
Did you know?
Are you, ma'am?
What? Do you want me to translate it? No. It should be Maria. It should be Laura. Maria and
Yeah,
Henry.
because I'm keep waiting. Waiting.
Just the first sentence, please.
So it says.
Okay, share it.
Wait, I'm still typing. Apa yang dibutuhkan bagi 3 ekor domba untuk membuat sebuah sweater? And the answer is saya tidak tahu bahwa domba bisa merajut. Is it neat merajut, right?
Ya, merajut.
Good. Yeah. And then the
But-
second one. Did
Okay,
you
the first
know?
one. The first one.
Kamu-
We just talk about the first one aja ya. Okay. Laura? Mana Laura belum? Laura sudah ya. Maria?
Yes, ma'am.
What is something misleading or about the humor? Okay, try to translate it, or okay, we talk about what is the humor about? What is something that is misleading? I didn't know sheep
Yeah,
could
what
eat.
is humor about?
Yeah, what is the humor about that? Anybody can answer that? Just pay attention to the first one. Nggak usah lihat yang kedua lagi lah, yang pertama aja. Okay?
Yeah.
What is the humor about? Henry? Three sheep to make a sweater.
Sweater.
Okay, very good example.
So you want another example?
No, just talk about the example.
Oh, just okay.
What is it? Do you
I
understand the humor?
I'm trying to.
Do you understand the humor behind that text?
It's quite because sheep cannot hold the needles or something. So they cannot make a sweater or.
Okay. What about three sheep?
Yeah.
Okay, Maria, what do you think? Maria?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Henry. Anything you want? Maria, what do you think about this humor?
What are your questions difficult?
Look at the first one. Example of the humor, the first example of humor text. The question is, can you translate the meaning of those texts? Translate the meaning. What is the humor behind that? Do you need to understand? What do you need to understand in order to understand this humor? Maria?
Yes, ma'am. I try to answer.
Just the first one, the sheep and the knit. Knitting. Yes, Maria? Very good example, Laura. I like it. Also good example from Henry, yeah. Yes, Maria? Any idea? Maria, are you with us? Ayo. Cepat, waktu hampir habis, belum bertanya loh.
No idea, ma'am. Sorry.
No idea bagaimana? Ayo, terjemahkan bahasa Indonesia gimana? How do you translate this into bahasa Indonesia?
In Indonesia,
apa yang dibutuhkan 3 ekor domba itu untuk membuat
Bagaimana?
Apa yang dibutuhkan oleh 3 ekor domba
Laura jangan ketawa. Untuk
membuat sweater.
Oke. Kemudian
I didn't know, saya tidak tahu.
Loh, Maria dan Laura kan satu tim, right? Saya tidak tahu apa. Saya tidak tahu apa. You are
Tidak tahu apa
in.
Maria?
Tidak tahu apa.
Sweaternya,
Hah? Tidak tahu apa.
sweaternya jadi atau tidak, Mem?
Twitternya jadi atau tidak. Hello. Okay, continue. Just leave it. Laura, continue. Dua orang satu tim kok gimana sih? Hello, continue. Yes?
Okay. Did you know it takes 3 shifts to make a
Okay,
sweet?
don't worry. Don't explain about it. You can explain it later. Continue with the presentation, please.
Okay, so it's just my last presentation, ma'am,
Okay.
about the humor. So thank
Okay.
you for the everything.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. If only you could share the presentation, the slide
Yes, ma'am.
earlier, it would be better. Okay, thank you very much, Laura. Questions?
Thank you, ma'am.
Question, please. Henry? Question, please.
Yes, ma'am. So in terms of literature and humanities and arts, I we already knew that trying to understand a song or poems are really difficult, and it is a very elaborate task to do, and even more elaborated to translate it, the poem or novels or short stories to another language. So, for example, if you want to translate, I remember our projects in the first semester. We try to make literature.
Better?
Yeah, we
Yes.
made literature works, and we translated the local stories, and we made that translations into English. And how do you find that translations based on this? How do you see the aspects of literature that need to be translated? Does the meaning, does the cultural backgrounds can be delivered accurately in target language in English? And probably, can you share the meaning of the jokes that recently?
The meaning will be sure.
Later.
Okay,
Later.
yes, later.
Well,
Yeah, the meaning.
Yeah.
Well, can I answer that?
Okay, please tell the children to be silent. The children.
Oh yeah.
Baribo, siapa yang anak beribo tuh?
I
Okay,
don't.
yes, please.
I don't, ma'am.
Henry anak beribot, kah? Okay, yes. Yes,
I
Laura.
don't.
Laura,
Okay,
please.
I simply interesting with the work of translation of literature, which is either is a poem, poetry, or have to think about the apa sih baku, bahasa bakunya. We just see the imagination, and then we just put there, and then we just looking that if the our word is equivalent with the target language, and is it fit or not. I just have the interesting to work with the literature. So Hendrik, I just feel it. Whether it is what you can say it with this, whether it's fit to my thought. I just look to the dictionary. That's all. Henrik, where are you? Henry, where are you? You just leave.
Hendrik, someone is answering your question. Laura is answering your
Yes,
question.
ma'am. The kids are yelling, so
okay.
I
chase them away.
I tell them to be quiet because they are playing mobile games, PUBG. So they play while screaming to kill the enemy. So I told them to leave. If they want to play, be quiet.
Okay. Go
Sorry,
ahead. Did you listen to Laura's answer?
And can you hear my explanation, or I have to repeat?
No, it's quite clear,
No.
Kakola. Oh, on the half part, I get the half part before I left. So maybe can you just sum up? Because I listened only half of your explanation.
Okay, I repeat. I do very interesting to work with the translation of literature because it's don't need bahasa baku, but it needs imagination, our imagination that works with rhythm or bahasa yang indah-indah. Itu saya suka. And then if you ask me about our last project, I just feel it in my heart, and then I looking the what is the translation into the dictionary, whether it's have the rhythm or not, whether it's have a rhythm or not. I just feel it and I looking at the dictionary. That's all. Hello, Henry.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And the last point is what? The last question, Henry?
I was wondering about the
The
joke.
joke. Okay, let's explain about the joke. Go back to the joke, Laura.
What you wondering about the joke about the translation or
The sheep.
The sheep.
the
Yeah.
shape?
Yeah.
Did you know? Okay. Did you know it takes three? This is the conversation not about the sheep, but I don't know, maybe a man or woman. Yeah, this is the conversation not the sheep itself, but about the man or woman that you turns this text about 2%. The first one, did you know it takes 3 sheep to make a sweater? Apakah kamu tahu berapa yang dibutuhkan untuk membuat 3? Apakah kamu tahu bahwa 3 sheep untuk bisa membuat satu sweater. Lalu orang yang kedua menjawab, dia tidak tahu bahwa ini sebagai objek bukan subjek. Jadi dia jawab, saya tidak tahu kalau sheepnya bisa merajut. Padahal kan pertanyaannya jawabannya tidak harus begitu. Jadi bentuk kelucuannya di situ. Yang pertanyaan jawaban orang kedua.
Kelucuannya di mana? Kelucuannya di mana?
Yang di jawaban nomor 2.
I didn't know that sheep could not knit. Kenapa sheep could not knit? Lalu yang di pertama, the sheep, the first, no, okay. The first sheep refer to what? 3 sheep to make sweater. 3 sheep to make sweater. Apa? Refer to what? Halo?
Maybe
Laura?
if one sheep, there is not enough, ma'am. Kalau 1 sheep saja mungkin kurang. Tapi kalau 3
Not
sheep,
enough. Apanya yang tidak enough?
Sweaternya, ma'am.
Sweater yang tidak enough or what? Any other idea? Do you know sheep? Do you know sheep? Sheep? What do the sheep use? They're
wool.
Yeah, they're fewer.
Yeah, the fur, yeah.
The fur to make wool. So they have to shave 3 sheep's
sweater,
wool,
3 wool to
3
make
sheep's shave all the fur to make a sweater.
A sweater. So I get it.
So they need 3 sheeps. They need the fur of the 3 sheeps in order to make a sweater.
To make a sweater. Yeah.
But the other people, the one that who listen to someone speaking don't understand about it, and she think that I didn't know that sheep can knit. Bukan sheep can knit, but take the fur of the sheep in order to make sweater. This is something background knowledge. You have to understand the background knowledge in order to understand the humor, right? Yeah, so there's a misunderstanding between the speaker and the hearer.
And
the speaker means the viewer of the ships, but the hearer didn't understand. He understand that it is the sheep that should knit, should do the knitting in order to prepare the sweater. But it's actually the viewer of the sheep. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. Any other questions? Any other questions, comments?
No, ma'am. Positive.
No,
Yeah, ma'am.
Pak Meno. Could someone take a picture,
Oh, yeah, ma'am.
a screenshot?
Screenshot. Yeah.
Yeah. Could someone screenshot so we
Ma'am,
can see?
sorry,
Yes.
maybe Takalora, please could you turn off the
Turn off the screen.
first so we can get the full picture of everyone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, stop
Turn off
sharing
the
ya.
screen. Yeah.
Okay.
No sharing. Okay. I will turn off the chat box.
By the way, for the full picture one is ma'am 80, ma'am. It's okay.
Okay, Memeti kenapa?
The one who got
Picture.
the almost a whole
That-
frame. Okay, everyone smile. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, thank you, Meno.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, everybody, I will send you the last task. And then please submit it by tomorrow. So I can send your score by tomorrow to Pak Carol. Thank you very much for working so hard. A very, very good presentation. Henrik,
Thank you, ma'am.
Laura,
Thank
and
you, ma'am.
Maria. I
Yeah.
do appreciate it. Thank you very
Thank you, ma'am.
much.
Thank you,
Stay safe
ma'am.
and healthy.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you so much.
Thank you,
Bye,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Thank you. Glad
Thank
to
you,
meet
Kak Meno.
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Thank you, Meno.
Okay.
Meno.
Oh, we want Pak Meno with us.
Yes.
Meno maju dong.
Yes, ma'am.
Kelihatan. Could you take a picture with Meno?
Okay, ma'am.
I want Meno with us. Pak Meno, makasih.
Okay, ma'am.
Nah,
Bye,
mana Pak
everyone.
Meno? Oh ya,
Bye, Meno. Oh, my.